Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. So, my friends, over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, I have seen a resurgence of a particular idea that I think is profoundly dangerous to the moral conscience of any rational individual, or particularly, if you want me to be more specific, the moral system that the country, America, the United States, has been founded upon. That is the moral system of respecting individual rights, viewing those rights as byproducts of the world, of a rational understanding of nature, which comes from a source external to us. And that moral system has been assailed by many different things over the years, but particularly during COVID, it has been assailed by a phrase that goes something like this: follow the science, or I believe in science. Now, when someone says this, they typically mean that there is a set standard or a set answer to a particular question or point of contention that has to do with something related to science. And so, they decide, instead of actually engaging the contention or even engaging inquisitively, Socratically with the science that they are praising, they simply wish to say, I believe in science. Whether the talk is about the impacts of pesticides on the human body, a practice that happens a lot in many agricultural industries around the country, people tend to say, I believe in science. Or particularly, as it relates to the COVID-19 vaccine, many people will defend it by saying, I believe in science. Now, I am not making a value judgment about the vaccine or about the pesticides. However, I am saying this: the idea of believing in science is as much of a fantasy as consulting a measuring stick for moral advice. Science, my friends, and the measuring stick have something in common. They both help us understand the context in which we make moral decisions. They do not themselves confer moral or ethical decisions or advice upon us, because they can't. They are simply tools. And we have the faculty of reason, which Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence, the idea of prudence, which would guide us through our political landscape. Yet so many people are forsaking their reason for the appearance of objectivity, which is embodied in scientific language, without actually recognizing the proper place of science as a tool to understand the world. And instead, they anoint science as a sort of moral compass by which we're supposed to understand the world. Science, my friends, has a lot of benefits for us, but we should never look at something and analyze its goodness on the basis of, or solely on the basis of, its consequences. There are principles that are endemic, that are implied by certain things, that we can look at and deduce without actually seeing the consequences of them. If we believe in the principle of individual rights, no matter what the consequences are of violating my rights, fundamentally, if you violate my rights, you are doing an immoral act. Whereas if I say the consequences are good, we could justify tyranny. We could justify all manner of disgraceful actions on the basis of good consequences. Consequences are nothing more than temporal, transitory, temporary things that shift and change with the perceptions of time. In politics itself, especially in America, especially in a system that is predicated upon popular decisions, that is predicated upon elective and popular representation from people in Congress, we are especially prone to the changing winds of perception. So no sane moral decision, no consistent moral decision can be made off the basis of consequences alone. Yet, many people do the same thing when talking about science. Science, my friends, is also responsible for eugenics. If someone simply says, I believe in science, and they don't add any qualifiers to that statement, how am I to differentiate their belief in science with their belief in certain practices that science most certainly could entail if taken to a certain extreme? I can't. The phrase follow the science or believe in science itself suffers from ambiguity. It suffers from the fact That phrase is just so nebulous that it could mean absolutely anything. And this is the danger. The moment we buy into nebulous phrases, and the moment we outsource our reason to an external source to be comfortable, because we don't think that we have the ability or the authority, conceptual, intellectual, moral, or otherwise, to challenge these institutions, to challenge these experts, to challenge the intelligentsia, the moment we do that is the moment we set ourselves up to be pawns for tyranny, to be pawns for immorality, to be pawns for bad politics, to be pawns for deception. Knowledge, my friends, political knowledge especially, is not passive. Things change so much, things evolve so much that it is a very active idea. It is a very consistent idea that must be pursued by someone, not lazily dismissed as the gift of scientific discovery. There's a reason why bioethics exists. Because guess what? Not every scientific discovery is inherently justified because it is a scientific discovery. We must test the fruits of our practices, and we must test the principles they're built upon to see how immoral or moral they are. So whenever you have someone say, I believe in science, ask them a few questions. Number one, what do you mean by that? Number two, does your belief in science mean an affirmation of everything that science can do? If not, why should you blindly believe in science? And number three, where can science take us that a rigorous moral and ethical understanding cannot take us? And if you can answer that question for me, why should I follow science as the place where it can take us? Don't tell me about how nice the road looks. Don't tell me about where the road went. Tell me what the road is going to go and where it's going to go ultimately. That's what I want to know. So no, I don't believe in science. I test everything. I rationalize everything. I investigate everything. And if I see that it has legs and merits to it, I'm for it. But if it's being used as a method to oppress my rights, or a method to assail the moral foundations of this country, which are inherently and righteously good, then I don't need to believe in that. I don't need to follow that. I need to resist that. Peacefully, but forcefully. Think on it. As always, my friends, I love you. And if you want to support me, patreon.com/OfficialCWatson or PayPal at officialcwatson@gmail.com. I love you, and please stay pensive. Bye-bye.